evidence-based practice work together to swap out those outdated habits for real life-saving science. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our quick roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the why of nursing research, then defining the scientific approach, the research process explained, evidence-based practice, the 5 steps of EBP, and finally, we'll wrap up with real-world barriers. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the why of nursing research. So, why is research absolutely necessary in the first place? Let's break this down line by line. The ultimate goal, as always, is improving patient care quality. To actually do that, research elevates nursing from just a job into a truly scientific professional discipline. It gives us the power to develop brand new procedures and techniques. It's how we solve really critical everyday problems. Think about issues like infection control or pain management. It's literally about providing the concrete evidence we need to promote care that is cost-effective and, most importantly, completely safe. Basically, research moves nursing away from simply following orders to actively solving complex patient challenges. Moving right along to Section 2, defining the scientific approach. At its core, research simply means searching again and again to uncover new knowledge. It's a highly systematic, scientific, and organized process where you're collecting, analyzing, and interpreting information to answer a specific question. Now, general research is great for finding broad answers, but nursing research? That takes this whole broad scientific method and narrows the focus directly onto the patient. It's systematic inquiry designed specifically to develop knowledge about nursing interventions and patient outcomes. You're basically taking abstract scientific methods and applying them right there at the bedside. But how do we know if research is actually good? Let's look at these characteristics line by line. Solid science must be systematic and logical. It has to be empirical, which is just a fancy way of saying it's grounded in real-world data, not just theories. It also needs to be replicable, meaning if another scientist repeats the study, they're going to get the exact same results. It has to remain valid and reliable over time. Crucially, the research absolutely must be objective, zero personal bias allowed. And it has to be ethical, protecting everyone involved. Hitting all these marks ensures the knowledge we're gaining is truly dependable. Okay, Section 3, the research process explained. The classic scientific method is kind of the overarching framework we use to find correct answers. You always start by identifying the exact problem you want to study. Then you review existing literature, because, hey, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. From there, you form a hypothesis, which is basically your prediction of what's going to happen, and then you collect your data. Once you analyze and interpret that data to find out what it really means, you draw your conclusion. But, and this is a big but, a study isn't actually helpful to anyone until you communicate those results to the rest of the medical community. Translating that overarching method into practical, everyday steps for a nurse means getting a lot more concrete. After you identify the problem and review the literature, a nurse has to form specific objectives and select a research design. That means deciding, hey, am I going with a qualitative or a quantitative approach here? Then you have to clearly define your population and sample and actually develop the concrete data collection tools, things like questionnaires or clinical checklists. Finally, you execute. You collect the data, analyze it, interpret the findings, and write the report. This right here is the ultimate blueprint for turning a pressing clinical question into actionable data. Which brings us nicely to Section 4, evidence-based practice. Now, this is where the magic really happens. Evidence-based practice, or EBP, is the crucial bridge that translates all those massive published scientific studies into an actual regular Tuesday morning nursing shift. It is fundamentally about ditching the old ways of tradition and guesswork, doing things just because we always have, and shifting entirely over to strong scientific evidence. Making this shift improves the quality of care, drastically reduces medical errors, and ultimately drives much, much better clinical decision-making. But wait, the concept of EBP isn't just about hard science. It's actually built on 3 equally important pillars. First, yes, you absolutely need the best available research evidence. That's a given. But second, it incorporates the nurse's clinical experience. The practical, boots-on-the-ground expertise you build on the floor truly matters. And third, it includes patient preference. What does the patient actually want and value? Evidence-based practice sits perfectly in the intersection of those 3 pillars, making sure care is scientifically sound, practically effective, and highly personalized. So let's break down how to actually do this in Section 5, the 5 steps of EBP. Let's anchor this whole idea with a classic clinical question. Does hand washing reduce infections? Now, I know today that's an established, obvious fact, but at one point in medical history, this was an urgent, highly debated question. No way, right? Keep this in mind as we walk through the modern EVP steps so you can see exactly how a nurse today would tackle a problem like this. So how is this process applied at the bedside? Let's animate through this line by line. Step 1, ask the clinical question, just like our hand washing example. What exactly is the problem we need to solve? Step 2, acquire the evidence. You do this by thoroughly searching current research articles and clinical guidelines instead of just guessing. Step 3, appraise that evidence. You have to make sure it's high quality and not biased. Step 4, if the evidence supports a better technique, you apply it directly to your daily patient care. And finally, step 5, assess the outcome. Did this actually improve patient care? Did those infection rates drop? It forms this beautiful, continuous, dynamic loop of learning and improving. Of course, it's not always easy. Section 6, Real-World Barriers to EBP. We really have to acknowledge that while this structured process sounds absolutely perfect in theory, the reality of healthcare is complex and it is fast-paced. Let's look at these barriers line by line. Implementation is often slowed down by systemic hurdles. Literally just a lack of time on busy shifts, limited resources like spotty internet access, or sometimes a frustrating lack of support from hospital management. And there are very real personal barriers too. Things like a lack of confidence in your own research skills, difficulty decoding really dense scientific jargon, or honestly, just human resistance to changing old comfortable habits. But hey, recognizing these realities is the absolute first step toward actively overcoming them.